Welcome to Lights and Shadows. In this section, you will learn all about 3D lights and how to create shadows. Lights and shadows will give your motion graphics animation and even your visual effects a whole new scenario and an impressive environment to work with. You will cover all types of lights, how to create them, animate them, and how to use all their properties. Using lights, you will be able to create shadows, and each light will present a certain way to get impressive shadows. Of course, I will show you the method for creating some very interesting shadows. You will also learn how to create a 3D environment using lights and shadows, and how 3D layers are affected by lights. So let's put the lights on and get into the shadows. Now in this lecture, I will introduce how to create a light, and we'll work with a single light. And then we'll develop later on with other lights that are very useful. Okay, so here we have an image. It's not in 3D because I want to show you something. And then you have a text that is light, and the color of the text is a bit gray. Of course, as usual, we are in our minimal workspace, and we have opened the project panel just over here. To add a light, all you have to do is to right click and you go new, and you have the light here. Just click on it. The light setting panel will open up for you to add your first light or to edit the light. We'll see that. There are several types of light here. If you click, you will notice you have parallel, spot, point, and ambient. Let's start with the ambient light. Now notice something very important here. Some of the properties here have been shaded off because this ambient light does not have these properties or does not work with these properties. So for the ambient light, all you have is the color and the intensity. And let's click OK. Now it'll give you a message here. Camera lights do not affect 2D layers. So these layers that you have in our composition should be in 3D so the light can affect them. So let's click OK and put these two layers into 3D. Now notice it seems like nothing has happened and you can't even see the light here. That is because it's an ambient light. The ambient light will just light up your composition, all the 3D layers. So let's edit the ambient light. If you scroll down, you have light options, and under light options you have only intensity and color for the ambient light. Other type of lights will have different properties over here. So you can increase the intensity, that is the intensity of the light, and you can just decrease it the way you would like. So you notice what's happening with the ambient light. First of all, there is no light. Actually, it is this small point over here. This is the light. And this is not the default position. This is the position of the last light I have created here. So if you create a light, then put an ambient light, you get a small dot here just to tell you the light is here. But really it doesn't matter because the ambient light will light up or will have an intensity on all the layers. Even this intensity, if you notice, it can become negative. Okay, so in some cases it will be very useful, in some cases not useful at all, like now. Cool. You also have the light color. You can change the color to anything you want. Okay, let's say we take yellow. So now all the 3D layers have been affected. Using the intensity now, you can play with the light. Now notice, this is a very interesting light, and you can get used to it if you want to light up your scene. Let's say you have several videos and you have some graphics and so on, and you want to insert a light that will brighten or dim or change the colors of all your 3D layers. That will be very useful ambient light. In our case here, what will be interesting is to make the text layer not 3D. And you notice the light now is affecting only the image itself behind. Now, there are several ways to edit the properties of a light. The first one is like I have done. You just scroll down and then scroll down the light options and you will see all the options. Or you can double click on the light and go back here, give it a nice name if you like, change the light type, we'll see that later, change the color and the intensity, whatever properties are here. Cool, guys. So this is for the ambient light. I'll put it back to 100%. And then in the next lecture, we'll see another type of light. So now we have viewed the ambient light, which is very important, and later on within this section we are going to use. Now let's change light. Let's explore another type of light. I will double click on the light to get the light settings. And notice the name here is ambient light 1. If you come over, for example, and select the light type as parallel, the name also will change. More properties have been highlighted for the parallel light. Now you have the fall off. I will explain this later on. For now, please keep it to smooth. It's okay. And then you have the radius is set at 1200 according to my previous slide. And you have a fall off distance is the distance when the light will not light anymore, will start, disappearing. And this light can cast shadows. Not all lights can cast shadows. And if you highlight cast shadows, you can have the shadows darkness. Let's put cast shadows off so we understand the light first. So what is exactly a parallel light? I'll click OK. And you notice within the layer also, you have intensity, the color, the fall off, we said the smooth, and you have the radius and the fall off distance. A parallel light is a light that's coming from very far towards your layers. Let's go for to view horizontal. And you notice here you have the light itself that has been positioned somewhere according to the previous slide. And the light is pointed towards its point of interest. Notice in the transform here, you will have point of interest and the position of the light. You can move the point of interest. I'll press shift to keep it on the center of the composition. Okay, and you notice that the light is coming from infinity towards your composition. So it's just a tube of light, if you like, and it has its radius over here. If you decrease the radius, that's what's going to happen. Okay, it's going to become smaller and smaller. So this is the parallel light, and it comes from very far towards its point of interest. Here you are. Of course, now we are working in 3D and you have the 3D axis. So you can move using the axis, okay, up and down, or the Z that is nearer or away. And then if you press Control or Command on the Mac and click on the Z, you can bring the light towards your layers or away if you like without moving the point of interest. And if you don't use Control or Command, you know very well it's going to just move the point of interest, just like the camera operation. Let's change view. Let's go to Custom 1 view. And you can see how the light is affecting your composition over here. Pretty interesting. I will press Control or Command of the Mac, click on the blue arrow, that's the Z, and just take it in and out. You notice what's happening. Now, if you put the light behind your layers, that is negative Z now, you notice that the light went off, and here you are, you don't have anything, you cannot see anything because the light is behind. Parallel light is pretty simple to use. We will go through the fall off and the fall off distance in later lectures so you can understand them very well. So this is about the parallel light. It's extremely useful. This is what's happening here. The light comes from infinity towards your 3D layers and it's focusing on its own point of interest. Thank you guys for listening. This is about parallel light and I hope you find it very useful. Later on we'll do some application and in the next lecture we will discover more interesting lights. And welcome to this lecture where we are going to explore the point light. Now, before I move to point light, I just want to bring it to your attention that a parallel light has a point of interest. And the point of interest will determine where the intensity is focused. If you move it out, okay, you notice that the intensity is moving, but the light itself still, focusing towards your 3D layers. Cool. So to change the type light, sometimes you can come to light options and from here you change to point. Or I like doing this is to come to the light, double click. Most of the time you come here because you will have it twirled up and then you change to point light. Now as soon as you change to point light, okay, some properties, it has the same kind of properties as the parallel light if you notice, but it's a point and the point of interest has disappeared. Well, how does it work? You can imagine the light coming out of the light itself, just from here and going towards your 3D layers. Well, the position of the highest intensity is always coming out from the light, not from the point of interest. So let's say, for example, bring it nearer to the layer. Okay, notice what's happening here. It's getting brighter on the point and dimmer around the point. Of course, whatever is dimmed it has to do with the fall off distance and the radius, mainly the radius. Okay, you can decrease it or increase it if you like. So you need to come and play with it. Actually, it's very nice. You can move your light now, and really you have a point. You notice? It's pretty cool. So you can take this point, for example, and you're doing some, I don't know, movies about aliens. You can play with this light, or even put it behind something. Like this is the 3D layer here. Let's open its position and take it forward. Okay, then you can take your light over here and put it behind the layer. So notice how the layer is going to become very black. Okay, you can do lots of animation, but the point is this is a point light and it points through its z-axis. By the way, you can't rotate it. And notice that the point of interest has disappeared and you have only the position. Let's change the color here and take it something nicer, just like this. Actually, this is all about the point light, but its applications are very nice. And let's explore the most important type of light, which is the spotlight. So let's come to point light 1, double click on it, and then you change the type here from point to spot. Now notice that the properties here have the same values of the previous light. If you change it or not, or you create a new light, you will always have the properties of the previous light you have used, whatever light you have used. So I'm going to change the color to white, okay? And we start noticing here how this light is a cone. I click OK and come over to the light options and start, changing them just from here. What's interesting about the spotlight? First of all, I would like you to make sure, maybe I forgot to mention it before, in the composition, just over here, the menu of the composition, you come to view options and make sure that spotlight wireframe is always on. Remember, we did that for the camera. So now you don't want it when selected, you don't want it off, you want it always on so we can see our light. Later on, you can decide in your project how to use it. So the spotlight has a cone. You notice there is a cone over here and it has a point of interest, which is very important. The point of interest is where the light is focused, and this is pretty interesting. Notice when I move it around, you can see exactly how it's just focusing, and it's pretty interesting, by the way, guys. I will undo this. Then you can come to the active camera and also move the point of interest to get it, to go anywhere you want. Fine. Let's put it over here. Now you can use the axis to move it, so you can move it left or right, as usual, like the camera, in and out, or just up and down if you like to. Cool. Also, what you can do is to click on the light itself. This is when the mouse pointer is not showing X or Y or Z. Just click on it and you can move it around the way you would like. Okay, notice how the cone is working, and it's pretty cool. So let's put it over here. Notice how the light now is really following the cone according to X, Y, Z. You notice you have the point of interest here and you have the position. So I'm trying to adjust it here. Let's go now to the cone angle. The cone angle is how wide is the cone here, or the spotlight. If you take it down, you notice you really have a very small spotlight. If you take it down on the Z, okay, notice what's happening. It's pretty cool. You need to come and play with it, guys. So I'm going to make the cone a bit bigger, right? Take the point of interest and just put it down on the floor, just over here. Okay, now you have the cone feathering. But actually now you are really feathering. It's at 100%. You can reduce it to 0 and you have a very sharp light. And notice over here, it's still shaded. So the cone feathering with the fall off distance, it means when the light will stop, giving light, if you like. I'm going to take the fall off distance and put it to 0. Notice now it's very sharp. You get the difference, guys. So you have the feathering and you have the fall off distance. Okay, so let's put it over here. Okay, let's zoom in a bit and then we increase the intensity of the light a bit. Okay, let's take the light from the view and just put it on top. Here you are. Okay, that's fine. Notice what's happening to the girl here. And then I'm going to increase the fall off. This is the fall off. I'm going to say the fall off distance, make it bigger and much more, so the light is really spending. Good. I want to see it in one view to show you. So now you have a very interesting lighting. So let's increase the intensity here, and you have it, very nice. Now this is very cool. This is how would you manipulate the spotlight. It's pretty interesting, by the way, guys. Another thing about the spotlight, if you notice, it has an orientation and rotations. Now I will use the Y rotation and move it. But notice what happened now. The point of interest stayed alone and the light moved exactly like the camera. I don't invite you to do that. I don't see the point of doing that, by the way. Why would you rotate it? In fact, try to animate the point of interest and forget about the rotation here. You notice the point of interest animation is very nice. We have put a spotlight, but everything else has become very dark. At your opinion, what light will I use to give some light to the surrounding? Now, we want a bright light on the girl, like if there is a light on top of her, we can take it up even more. Okay, just like this. So the light is just above. Okay, and then we want to light the environment. So what light will that be? Well, let's see. Actually, we can right click, say new, and say light. And as simple as this, instead of spotlight, let's put, for example, an ambient light. Okay, I'll click OK. Here you are. Now, this ambient light is very, very strong. This is one way to do it, by the way, guys. And then I'm going to reduce the intensity. Here you are. Now that makes sense, right, guys? Okay, and you notice the kind of visual effects and animation you can do. Now, what is amazing here that you can change the color of the ambient light. Let's take it towards something very obvious so we can see it. Now, this is very nice visual effects. You have the yellow, mixing with the lights of the spotlight itself just over here. Pretty cool. Now, if you want the girl to be much brighter, for example, I will come to intensity and, increase the intensity, but I'm starting to lose some details from the image, but this is quite cool. Take it down. Okay. Now you're making a very romantic scene or very emotional scene. The yellow light is not very appropriate here. You might want to choose a different kind of light. For example, I don't know, I will go just over here. That looks better. Okay, but you can see the details from the other side. You can increase the intensity, and here you are, you have a new scene. So now the spotlight is the most practical, and also you can use it with the other lights. In this lecture, I would like you to focus on the fall off, the radius and fall off distance, and acquire a great understanding, because they will help you a lot in doing your visual effects and your motion graphics, and including some very interesting lights. So please with me open the composition to fall off, and over here we have a single light. If you notice, I removed the ambient light, only one single light. And this is what I would like you to do. First of all, take the cone feathering to 0, okay, and take the fall off to none, and take the radius to 0 and the fall off distance to 0, and let's notice exactly what we have. We have a light here that will never fall off. You notice? If I take it backward, it will never fall off. In fact, it will stay on all the time. It has no fall off. And it depends on the cone angle for the light. So now you have a nice spotlight over here. So what exactly is a fall off? Imagine yourself in a corridor or in a tunnel, and you have a flashlight in your hand. And this tunnel or corridor is really very long, infinite. If you point the flashlight straight towards infinity, after a certain distance, the light starts falling off or disappearing. This is the fall off. Now I have put the fall off on, and we notice the light will never, go off or will never fall. Let's try something else. If you come to fall off here, you have 3 options: the smooth and the inverse square. Let's go for the smooth now. And the light completely disappeared. Why is that? Because the radius of the light is set to 0. Let's increase a bit the cone, okay, and start increasing the radius. I press shift to increase it pretty fast. Here you are. And at a certain point, the light start, coming into existence, if you like. And this is a pretty sharp light. The cone feathering is put to 0. This is the cone of the light, not the cone of the spotlight. This is the cone of the spotlight, and this is the cone of the light. You could imagine this in 3D. It's like you take a lampshade that is open from under and you stick it to the ceiling. Now from the ceiling to the ground, and it's going to give you a kind of circle on the ground. This is the cone. It starts from here, that's the ceiling, and then it gives you this cone on the floor. So this is the concept of the radius. If you increase the radius, of course, the light increases in distance. This is the radius over here. Okay, if you increase it, the light is gonna be bigger, as simple as this. This light is not falling off, and it's very unusual. But still, remember guys, you can use it in very many visual effects and motion graphics. Let's say now the fall off. Let's take the radius a bit behind, just to put it over here. Okay, and then start working on the fall off. If you start increasing the fall off, this will be the distance from the end of the cone to where or how long it's gonna take for the light to disappear. This is the fall off distance. So it's from 0 and you grow it and start falling off. But it's very natural in After Effects. You notice this is the distance that the light start falling off, meaning the intensity of the light is gonna be, diminishing until there is no more light. Look how natural it is over here. If you make it even bigger, here you are, you have quite some lighting here, and notice that the distance is increasing and the intensity is inverse to the distance and is diminishing and becoming totally nil over here. So this is the concept of fall off for smooth, radius, and fall off distance. Cool. Let's put them back to 0. 0 to the radius and the fall off distance to 0, and go to the option of inverse square clamped. Here you are. Still we don't have a light. So let's try the radius here. If you increase the radius, notice what's going to happen. Here the light starts with very high intensity, and immediately after this intensity it starts falling off. Okay, let's take it behind and see exactly what happens. Okay, so the light, it takes very long for it to disappear, and actually at a certain point I'm gonna press shift, it's gonna disappear. That's very far distance now. I'm gonna bring it back in. Here you are. Wow, I'm pressing shift. Okay, so this is the inverse square. It's very bright and it starts falling off. You notice that the use of the fall off distance becomes redundant and useless here, because the light is falling off, and at a certain point it will disappear, of course. So if you play with the fall off distance, it's not gonna make any difference at all. Now it's up to you. How do you want your light to be? You have the smooth with the fall off distance. Okay, I'm gonna give it some. Or you have the clamped or inverse square, if you like, where it's very bright here and it's falling off. Well, each option here, even the none, has its own applications depending on the visual effects and the motion graphics that you want to create. Most of the time they ask me, okay, how do I create a disco light? Well, this is the disco light, as simple as this. In fact, I'm going to take the fall off down, okay, and let's take the cone down, and here you are. You have a kind of a disco light. Of course, you need to adjust it. I'm just showing you. This is a nice disco light. It moves around depending where you want it, and you can change the colors, put them all kind of colors, and you have very nice disco light. There are very many movies that there were no disco lights, and they added the disco lights in After Effects, and really you can get fantastic results. Okay guys, so this is about the fall off, the radius, and the fall off distance. I hope you got the concept 100%, and I hope you will use it all the time and make the right decisions of what kind of fall off you want. And welcome to the shadows, or welcome to creating shadows, whatever you like. Now, if you want to follow along, and I would appreciate if you follow along, you will learn much more. Please open the project file shadows.aep. In this lecture, we're gonna start creating shadows, and then we'll play with them, see exactly what lights you like and how to manipulate things. After opening the file, you will notice that I imported here some logo cube. If you open the logo cube, you will notice that you have two nice cubes, or a kind of logo if you like. Fine, let's go back to the intro shallows here, and we want to take just part of the cube. I will take the open one, just click on it, drag it, drop it here, and scale it down, let's say to 50%. Okay, we are now in 2D still. Now I want to create the background. I will use a solid layer, give it a nice color. Gray will work for now, it will give us nice shadows. We click OK. Take the solid, drop it under, and we make them both 3D. Okay, and we go to view horizontals, and let's notice that the logo and the solid layer are on the same plan Z. Cool. Let's now add a light and create the shadows. I will right click, say new, and let's add a light. To start with, we are going to use, for example, a point light. Now, if you use an ambient light, you notice there is no shadows. In all the others, there will be a shadow here. You notice it can cast shadows. Let's start with the point light, and of course, you want to enable cast shadows. Intensity and fall off is okay, we are going to work on them. Now, as soon as I drop the light, you notice the light is in front, but there is no shadow. There are a few things that you need to verify to get shadows. First of all, there should be a layer that will accept the shadows. In our case, this will be the solid layer. Cool. Let's go to the solid layer here, and let's go to the material options. So our solid layer here can accept shadows. You can change that to say shadows only. So the solid layer does not appear, but it only gets shadows and it became totally white. Or you can put shadows off. Let's put shadows on. So now we have the solid layer accepting the shadows. Cool. Still we can't see any shadow. That is because the logo itself should cast the shadows. Right, guys? So if you come to material options over here, you will notice that you have cast shadows is off. Well, the options are here, off or on. So now you can have shadows, or shadows only. It means the layer will disappear and you can see only its shadow. Pretty cool. Let's put it now on shadows on. Still, we cannot see any shadow. That is because the layer that is accepting the shadow and the layer that is casting the shadows, that is the logo, are on the same Z plan. So you need to move it a bit towards the light so the shadow has some distance to appear. And here is the shadow. Now this is pretty cool, right, guys? So actually, in summary, you need the light to cast shadows. You need a layer that will accept the shadows. And you need the object to also cast the shadows. Here you are. And there should be a distance on the Z-plan for the shadow to appear. Otherwise, the shadow and the object will be merged. Okay, so there is shadows if they are on the same plan, but they are merged. Okay, so I put it in front over here. Let's go to the light itself and start adjusting the shadows from the light. Let's turn down light and light options here. First of all, you have the intensity. Okay, you notice it does not affect the shadow, but since the point light is burning somewhere and even the shadow is getting burned, if you notice, just like this. Okay, so let's keep it at a reasonable figure of 100 will be okay. The fall off will affect the shadows, we'll see that later. And of course you have shadow darkness. You can make your shadows very dark, above 100%, even that will be totally black. And you can make the shadow diffusion, now it's at 0. I would say the diffusion is like the blurring of the shadow. If you take it up slowly, you will notice how the shadows are being diffused. Let's put it, for example, at 15. I like that. So you have nice shadows, but they are diffused. In the next lecture, we'll start moving around the light and the two layers here and see exactly what's the effect. Okay, in this lecture, guys, I'm going to play around. I'm going to show you several tricks and tips just to get you very familiar with the lights and what you can do with lights and shadows. Now, the first thing I want to do is to come to the point light and make the shadow diffusion to 0 and increase, for example, the shadow darkness to 50% so you can see it very clearly. Now, after that, I want to take the inner of the cube and just drop it inside over here. And of course, I want to scale it at 50%, make it a 3D, okay, and position it as best as possible to be just in the middle of the other one. Okay, something like this will do. Of course, I wanted to cast shadows, so I will come to material options and cast shadows. I'll just put it on. Okay, so this guy is starting to cast shadows, but he is like 100% flat. So I'm going to take it and just drag it and put it on the other guy position. The best way to do that is to come to the first guy, press P, and we notice we have minus 126. Make it minus 125. And this guy also, for its position, we make it minus 125. Okay, so they are on the same plan. Now, let's look at it carefully here. If you take the inner one and move it forward towards the light, now that's what's happening here. First of all, it has a shadow. That's very nice. But you notice that the object that's behind, this one, is also accepting the shadow of this element. Well, if you don't want that, you can remove it. Let's go to the one that's accepting the shadow from the smaller one and open the material options. Okay. And here you have accept shadows. Just put it off. So now this layer will not accept shadows and there will be no shadow on it. So it depends on what you want to do and how the animation you want it to work. You can have the shadow appearing on a certain layer or not. Okay, let's take the bottom layer now and open the rotation. This is the layer that is accepting the shadows. And start rotating it on the x-axis, just like this. Okay, notice how the shadow is really changing. Fine. We want to take it down. You notice what's happening over here, so it does not intersect with any of them. Okay. And then what you want is to make it very big as you like, so it can accept all kind of shadows that are falling from wherever the position of the light. Now it will be very nice if we add another layer here. I will go to new and get another solid layer. Let's give it this color and drop it at the bottom. Make it 3D. Okay, and of course we wanted to accept shadows, which is already the default. Now you have something very beautiful that you can really work with. You can adjust them the way you would like. For example, if you take the bottom one and lift it like this, okay, make sure they're not intersecting. You know, doesn't do like this. Just over here. Okay. Now you have a very nice shadow that's going on both layers, the vertical one and the somehow horizontal one. So now you have a very nice, setup to start playing with the lights. I'll take the light and start taking it up, for example. Notice what's happening here. So you have the light affecting both shadows here, and notice how the shadows are moving over here. Okay, I'll take it down and take it over here. Now, I don't like this kind of shadows. What I'm gonna do is to take both of them and put them at the same plan. That will be the that plan, approximately, maybe just a bit, just like this. Cool. So now you have the lights that you can move around, and notice what's happening, how the shadows are being, displayed wherever you like. Okay, this is pretty cool animation, and it's really playing with the shadows the way you would like. Okay, here you are. I love this kind of shadows animations in After Effects. Now these two layers have been affected by the light all the time, and they're changing intensity. You can cancel that if you like. Let's take them both and open the material options. Okay, and say accept lights. You put it to off. So now it does not accept lights, meaning it does not change according to the lights, but it will cast the shadow, and that's pretty interesting, guys. Let's take the second one and open the material options again and accept lights. I'll put it off. Okay, here you are. So now you have them always bright, always their original colors without being affected by the light. Cool, guys. So you can create now very nice animations and try to do your best to make sure that you're getting all kinds of shadows and the shadow that you like. Now we've been using here the point light. What happens if we change light? And this is what we are going to do in the next lecture. Now guys, before we start changing the type of light that we are working with, I would like you to explore more about the position of the lights and how it affects the shadows. Here we have a simple spotlight Cool. We can see the spotlight here, and this diffusion is making the shadows. Now what happens if you take the light on top, for example here? Now it's showing on the bottom layer here. And then what will happen if you move it just parallel to the layers themselves that are casting shadows? You notice what's happening to the shadow here. Now, of course, what will happen if you take it behind the layers? That's the most interesting. That's where I want to get. Let's say we take it down, and notice what's happening here. They're coming up, over here. If you use the X, because we don't have X on the other view, and notice what's happening. The shadows now are in front of the layers that are casting the shadows and not behind on the wall. This is pretty interesting, and this is how to get the shadows in front. Okay, I invite you to play with this slide. There are so many possibilities. But it's very important to notice why this happened. I'll select the layer, and if you remember, we came to the material options over here, and accept lights, we put it to off. If you put it to on, obviously it's going to be affected by the light, and it's going to turn into black because the light is behind it, so you cannot see it. So this is a combination, if you like, of the position of the light plus the position of the layers that are casting the shadows, plus accepting or not accepting the lights. Now this is pretty cool, and I'm just showing you certain tricks, and I want to guide you to explore even more and explore the possibilities. Don't go looking at the video on YouTube and get so impressed and then you can't replicate it, and you almost learn nothing from these guys trying to do very magical things. So positioning the light is very interesting, plus the combination inside the material options. Okay guys, so for example, this is not bad at all. If you put the light here, you have something very beautiful. You can now rotate the layer maybe a bit more or less. Okay, let's go and rotate it. We are at -71. Let's make it a bit more. Notice what's happening to the lights. You can now position it again, or position the light again, so you can get the effect that you want. So it's not miraculous. It's very easy and pretty simple if you try to dig in. So if you're trying to do a project and you want certain results, well, it's going to be hard. But if you set up this kind of environment here, and the light and the cubes, and start moving the lights and really take note, you will notice that later on when you're doing a good project, things will become really easy for you. Okay guys, so I hope this was interesting. I just wanted to point it out to you. Please play with the lights, play with the material options, stories like this, get used to it. This is already a very nice environment, much nicer than having the light in front of the layers. And welcome to more shadows. It's going to be very interesting. I hope you're having a lot of fun. In this lecture, we are going to do two things. We're going to work with the spotlight and see how it gives the shadows. And also, we are going to work with two lights. This is something I like, and I would like to show you how to work with a point light and a spotlight. Let's duplicate this composition. Okay, that will be much better. Control D or Command D on the Mac, and you have the intro to Shadows 2. I double click on it and close the others so we don't get confused. So we already have our point light. I'm going to put the point light off and right click to create a new light, and this time I'm going to take a spotlight and make sure that the radius is okay and you have cast shadows on. Okay, maybe you add the shadow diffusion just a bit. Cool. Now notice the spotlight operation is totally different. So it's really a spot. Nothing much has changed in case of the shadows. If you notice, this is the shadows. So you can adjust your light the way you would like, position it. I will try to position it itself. Here you are. And depending on the direction of the light, you also have the shadows. What's interesting about the spotlight is the point of interest. If you click and drag, you will notice that the light is changing places, but the shadows are not moving, and that is pretty convenient. Remember, in the point light, it didn't work that way. You move the light, the shadow moves. But here, you're moving the position or the cone, but the shadows are still in the same place. Here you are. So this is the advantage of spotlight. And within the spotlight, you can, I don't know, play with the fall off if you like. There will be not much difference in this case, the radius and the fall off distance. So it's up to you to work with it. Now, look what I'm going to do here is something that I really want to show you. I'm going to put the point light again on. So now we have two lights and we have two shadows. I'm going to come to the spotlight and remove the shadow. So cast shadows, I'll put it off. Now notice what's happening here. It's pretty interesting. There is a simple shortcut that will remove the wireframes for all the cameras so you can see what you're doing. It is Control-Shift-H, and if you are on the Mac, it should be Command-Shift-H. First, make sure that select the active camera and you go Control-Shift-H or Command-Shift-H. Here you are. So now we can see clearly what's happening. So notice how beautiful it is. You have the point light and you have the spotlight itself. So you know you have double lighting. Yet you can position the light, the spotlight, a certain way where you have a pretty nice effect over here. Okay, maybe we just do it just like this, something like this. Yep. Okay, so notice what's happening here. You have the point light and you have the spotlight. The spotlight is giving you a light on the lower layer or the ground if you like. And the point light is giving you a light just over here. Of course, you need to come and, align them pretty nicely. You can just play with the point of interest. So notice how interesting it is. You have the point light that's giving a certain light and the shadow, and you have added the spotlight without the shadows. So actually, it's up to you now to be very creative on what you want to do and how you want to do them. This is an understanding of how to work with lights, and I'm just trying to show you the effect that you can have, and they are pretty interesting. Now we have a simple graphic that is in 2D. Imagine you create a graphic in 3D. You will be able to have very nice lights and very nice animations. For example, if you come to the cube over here, let's parent one to the other, so we animate only one. Okay. Open the rotation and just scrub through the Y rotation. That's what's happening here. It's very interesting and very beautiful. Cool, guys. I hope I didn't take long to show you, but this is very interesting, and exploring these lights is also very important. So when you get a project, you're doing it, you know everything. Thank you very much for listening. I will see you in the next lecture.